Ladies and gentlemen, fellow consumers, wherever you are around the world, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and those that are retiring today watching us, I will be wishing you a good night. So, colleagues, I would like to welcome you to yet another consumer empowerment series that we always have on the Humanists TV. Today, we are looking at the burden of NCDs among consumers. The NCDs are non-communicable diseases. But as we are looking at the burden of NCDs among consumers, there is a need to have a relationship between unhealthy diets and cardiovascular diseases. All these are in on one person, the consumer. All these looks at our lifestyle, looks at and unpacking lifestyles, our behavior, how do we approach issues. So there are many guidelines, there are many standards, there are many policies that are there to safeguard us as consumers. But as we unpack, like always we do, we would like to thank the Humanist TV for the opportunity, plus the board that it is, has, that drives the Humanist Media Africa. Today, I'm going to be with my colleague, Bernard, who always unpacks, simplifies, and grounds issues that are technical for us and puts them out. Him as a nutritionist, a public health specialist, consumer advocate, he will be sharing with us the burden of the NCDs, what is its relationship with our behavior in the public and where there is no public. So all is entailed. So consumers, as we start and bring in the new series of this aspect, there are quite a number of issues that help us to be healthy, to be socially positive. But these require us to be involved. And there are many things that require us to be involved. And we need to look at these issues from a different perspective. These issues impact us differently. As consumers, we have got rights and responsibilities. We need to remind you of them always. But looking at today's discussion, it is going to evolve around a number of our consumer rights. And it will also lead us to our responsibility. As consumers, we have got a right to basic needs. And you'll find the basic need, one of it is adequate food under the basic needs. You'll find that the other basic needs is healthcare, sanitation, and health. But when you look at the relationship of unhealthy diets and the diseases, you are going to find that the burden of NCDs among consumers is linked to our rights, is linked to our responsibilities. So there is a right to basic needs, which includes food, sanitation, and health. There's a right to safety. There is a right to information. There is a right to choice. How do we choose the foods we eat? How do we understand the information that we have the right to? We have a right to education. How do we use the education to have healthy diets, to have nutritious diets, not to have a burden? So, as consumers, we need to look at all of these, and these are also hinged into different policies. You'll find the Constitution, you have got bills of rights in there. You come into policies, there are policies about equality, there are policies about health, there are policies about food, school feeding, there are policies about standards. Then there are regulations. Then there are standards. Then they are ministries, departments, and agencies who have got duty to safeguard you. But if they are safeguarding you, are you safeguarding yourself? So some of these awarenesses that we're doing at times are there to awaken us and safeguard us against our wrong behavior. So consumer voices are very key. But as we raise the consumer voices, we need to be cognizant that we have got responsibilities. And under these responsibilities as consumers, we need to be critically aware what is leading to NCDs. What is it a burden? What is leading to this burden? What are the unhealthy diets? What are the respective diseases that come with the unhealthy diets? There we need to be critical aware. That's our responsibility. That said, then we need to take action as our second responsibility. That now we know it is our right to adequate food, which is safe, which I have a right to make choice, but I've been given the information, the education. Then it is your responsibility to take action so that NCDs do not become a burden to you, to your family. You need to take action and be socially concerned that they might be other consumers, whether in my family or my kinsfolk, that do not know. I need to have social concern and educate them, make them aware of their decisions, their behavior, so that they are not a burden to themselves and they are not even burden to society, even not being a burden to the economy. So it is very key that we take on these responsibilities. Having a healthy environment from which we have a right to a healthy environment, but also we have a responsibility to that environment. The environment can impact the quality of food you eat. So as we are unpacking today's discussion, I thought that I could do that categorizer. Once again, relate your rights and responsibilities as consumers. Also link them to the duty bearers, link them to businesses, that where businesses have a responsibility and need to be critically aware of your health. The duty bearers need also to be critically aware of your health. They need to take action where your health is going to be affected as duty bearers. So having linked and tried to bring all about that, I thought that this would enable us to see how the role of regulations, the role of policy, the role of business are to our health and the role that we need to play as consumers. We need not only to educate ourselves, but we need to network, we need to partner, we need to be thirsty for information that can keep us healthy. With all that said, we are living in a world where the diets are changing very fast because of the global dynamics. There is rural-urban migration. They are increasing, mushrooming urban setups, even our trading centers in our communities. That's where we convene in the evening. That's where all sorts of fast foods are coming in with everything. But I would like to unpack that. My colleague Bernard, Mr. Bernard Bwambale, is going to lead us through and help us understand and make us more responsibility. So, colleagues, I would like to welcome Mr. Bernard Wambale to lead us through our discussion today. You're most welcome, Mr. Bernard.
Mr. Chimera, just to be sure that you can be able to hear me. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, and I can hear the smile because I'm saying it. So you are audibly clear.
Okay, so well, thank you so much once again for the curtain riser, and thank you Bongole for producing this in the studio. Of course, today we are discussing aspects of what Mr. Chimera has just been talking about, but looking at the NCD burden amongst us, the consumers. You know very well that currently we have a burden of non-communicable diseases, and I want to speak passionately about them. But you realize that today we are not going to look at all the NCDs, but rather we're going to specifically look at cardiovascular diseases, because now there is a tendency of speaking about NCDs, and then we even forget that actually there are quite a number of them. And so whenever you speak about NCDs, and we leave it at that, many times the consumers lose out on exactly what we are speaking about. So in the next few episodes, we shall focus on NCDs, but we shall be talking about one particular NCD at a time. And for today's episode, we are basically going to focus our attention on cardiovascular diseases. And I'll explore what that is, and then we see how they are linked to unhealthy diets, and also try to look at what we can do as individuals, but also what we can do as a country, what our leaders can do to safeguard the population from these non-communicable diseases. Now, to begin with, non-communicable diseases are characterized by, I would say, the diseases that take long to actually manifest. So they have a long lattice period, meaning that one can start developing a non-communicable disease, and then you take over 5, 6, 8 years before the actual disease actually manifests. So it's therefore important that each one of us is very cognizant about NCDs, because the NCDs can come, any of them can actually manifest, but then it takes quite some bit of time to manifest. So one could start developing diabetes, for instance, and then by the time you realize all the signs and symptoms, and then by the time you discover that actually you have diabetes, it's about 6 years or so since you developed it. One of the other NCDs that is common is the different types of cancers. The brain cancer, the liver cancer, the kidney cancer, the skin cancer, the oral cancer, esophageal cancers. All those are different cancers. Now, such cancers can actually start developing slowly. And so by the time you recognize that actually you're suffering from a cancer, it has taken you about 8 years. And that's why you see in most of our developing countries, it's always rare that we find a case of cancer curing, because by the time we discover the cancer, it's actually too late. It's already in advanced stages because it has been developing slowly but sure. And that's why I want to warn the consumers. This business of telling us, no, but I've been drinking my soda every day and there's nothing that is happening. Yes, it is okay. But remember, it doesn't cause an infectious disease, but rather it causes a non-communicable disease. So it will take time, but then what you're doing today can result into a non-communicable disease in the next 5, 6 years. So the earlier we prepare ourselves, the better. The faster we protect our people from getting NCDs, the better for us. So that is one, it takes quite long to manifest. And secondly, something else that is a little bit unique with non-communicable diseases is that when you suffer from it, it is yours alone. Like if I have it, I am not going to just give it to my wife or my children just like that. No, I will suffer from it alone. It is me. It's not infectious that I can send it to another person. So it is you alone. It cannot spread through, contact with somebody. No, no, no. It is yours. So it is non-communicable. It will not communicate that it is coming, and so it is non-communicable. Number two, you will own it alone. In fact, you can be in the home. So sleeping with somebody or somebody or drinking on the same cup of bottle or whatever, it doesn't necessitate crossing of the NCD from one person to another. So you bear it alone. So you as a consumer, the disease belongs to you and belongs to you alone. Only that the effects of the non-communicable disease will affect your family members because they have to treat you, they have to sell off their land to actually treat, they have to take care of you, they have to spend a lot of money on you. So the impact or the effect of non-communicable diseases can actually affect other people. But for you, you are the one suffering from it, from the pain of it. So we need to know that. And therefore, there are quite a number of non-communicable diseases that we shall be speaking about in the different episodes. Maybe something that you need to note from this conversation is that the non-communicable diseases are still the leading cause of death currently. We see that 80% of premature death premature death are those that occur when they're not supposed to occur. They are occurring at the wrong time. So you find a child of 8 years and has diabetes. This child is supposed to live longer. So 80% of all premature deaths are related to non-communicable diseases. But you realize that CVDs, or the cardiovascular diseases, in 2021 and 2022, they were the leading cause of death actually among the consumers. We realized that cardiovascular diseases, for instance, we see that we had 17.9 million people in 2021 who had their cardiovascular diseases, 17 million people, followed by cancer, which was affecting 9.3 million people. This is global, these are global statistics. And then it was followed by respiratory diseases. One would wonder, one would even think that respiratory diseases are not non-communicable, but actually they are. In one of the episodes, I will show you the relationship between asthma and sugar, or asthma and fat. So respiratory diseases are also non-communicable diseases in some instances, and actually they were contributing to 4.1 million people who were actually sick in that year 2021. And then diabetes, which of course had 1.5 million people. All of these people died actually of these non-communicable diseases. Now, let us, for today, let us focus on the cardiovascular diseases. What are these cardiovascular diseases that we are talking about? Now, when you're talking about cardiovascular diseases, these are also non-communicable diseases, meaning they come slowly, they will take time to manifest, but suddenly they will come. And there are many. Now, every time we talk about cardiovascular disease, this is just a group of particular diseases that affect the heart, but also they affect the blood vessels. So it's just a grouping. So there are quite a number that I'm going to speak about here just to help consumers understand where these things are coming from. Now, maybe before I go to the cardiovascular disease, I have to note that all these NCDs have similar risk factors. And the leading risk factor for all of them is unhealthy diets. Unhealthy diets. These are diets that are high in fat, high in sugar, and high in salt. So, ladies and gentlemen, every time you as a consumer you go out, you like going out, outings or whatever, watch out the diet that actually, or the meal that is being served to you. So every time meals or our diets are high in sugar, are high in salt, and are high in fat, you're already calling the risk factors to yourself. Now, what's wrong with these three nutrients of critical concern? Number one, if you look at fat, the more we consume saturated fat, the more we keep eating industrial trans fatty acids, the more we are causing trouble to our bodies. So continuous intake of fat, the body will receive this fat, but when it receives it, sometimes the body is actually not able to use this fat because the body depends on carbohydrates for energy and can only resort to the usage of fat in the absence of carbohydrates. So usually what the body does is that it receives this fat. The more you take in the fat, it takes it in, doesn't refuse it, and then it converts it into a fat kind of adipose tissue, a fat molecule, and then it deposits it in our bodies. Now, it deposits most of this fat in areas of our bodies that can expand, and many other times, of course, you'll see people putting on weight. Now, that body weight we are putting on is actually fat accumulation. It is just showing you that the body has been taking in fat continually, and so we have a lot of fat that we are actually consuming. And at the end of the day, we end up having adipose tissue, even the fat accumulating in the blood vessels. So the more you have too much fat in your body, the more you start putting on weight, and so you go into what we call overweight. And progressively or chronically, you end up in what we call obesity. Now, obesity is a disease of excessive fat in your body tissues, including your tummy, your biceps, your buttocks, all those body parts. They start expanding because of the fat molecules. Now, these fat molecules now can go and start clogging in the passage of blood, in the vessels that are actually taking blood to the different body organs. Now, there are scenarios where the arteries or the vessels that are taking blood to the heart are affected. They are clogged with fat molecules. So what happens is that every time the vessels that are taking blood to the heart are clogged with fat, it means that you are reducing the passage where the blood is supposed to pass. And in that way, the blood is not reaching the heart at the right time and at the right normal speed. So what happens is that the narrower the vessel, the higher the pressure in that vessel, because the blood is forced to pass through a narrow tubing, and so it will go at a very high pressure to go through that smaller tubing. So every time you reduce the surface area of your blood vessel, just because they have been clogged with some fat, now you increase the pressure of the blood that is going through there, and that is what brings about the high blood pressure or even hypertension. Yeah. So every time there is high fat accumulated in a vessel, the vessel narrows down, and when it narrows, the blood that is supposed to go through that narrow tube is the same as what was going through the bigger tube. So it has to move through that using a high force, high pressure, and that is now one of the diseases we call the high blood pressure. What is causing that? Accumulation of fat. And so that can be very, very dangerous. Now, sometimes the vessels, because they are clogged, they start hardening. They start hardening. So the fat, instead of the vessel relaxing at any one time they want to relax, or anytime they want to, they want to relax and contract. Now, when there is a lot of fat, that doesn't happen. So they become thick. So you have a thick wall of the vessel, and that is already another serious disease of the vessels. So instead of the vessels relaxing freely, now for you, you've put in a lot of fat, and so they are not able to relax. So they are thicker instead. So that way, they can cause a lot of trouble. Yeah. So sorry, somebody was calling, but that's how we get challenges, because you're thickening the walls of your heart or the walls of the vessels, so it means that you're going to have challenges. So there are many cardiovascular diseases that are just brought about by accumulation of that too much fat within our body organs. Now, if the blood is not reaching the heart at the time they're supposed to reach there, it means that one can black out. One can black out because the blood is not reaching the heart. Or if the vessel that is affected by fat is taking blood to the brain, what is going to happen is that the moment the brain misses blood in just a second, you can have a brain blackout, and then the brain blacks out just because the blood is not sufficiently reaching the brain. You can even have vessels that are taking blood maybe to the liver or to the kidney or to the pancreas. The moment those vessels are blocked by the fat that you're overeating, it means that blood is not reaching the kidneys at the right time. Blood is not sufficiently reaching the liver where detoxification is supposed to happen. Blood is not reaching the lungs. If the vessels going to the lungs are the ones affected, it means the blood is not going rightly to the lungs. And then if the blood is supposed to be going to the vessels of the limbs or the legs, it means that the blood is also not reaching timely or promptly to the limbs. And that's when you see people having they have numbness. Maybe the blood was going to the hands, and then the vessels of the hand are the ones affected, it means you can have paralysis or you can have numbness because the blood is not sufficiently reaching there. If the blood was supposed to be moving to the eyes, and then the vessels connecting to the eyes are the ones affected by the too much fat clogged there, it means that the blood is not reaching the eyes, and so you can have eyesight problems. I mean, all those organs I'm talking about, they have vessels that are supplying them. And when you're talking about cardiovascular diseases, we are saying a combination of all those diseases that affect the heart, but also the vessels that are taking blood to the different organs. So that is how serious the cardiovascular diseases can be. And maybe to just give you a little bit of hint, maybe to explain some of those diseases a little bit in details. For instance, we have a disease called coronary heart disease. Coronary heart disease is the blockage or the reduced flow of the blood in the blood vessels of the heart. You know, that is coronary heart disease. So the blockage or the reduced flow of blood to the heart muscles. So if the blood is going to the muscles of the heart and the fat has blocked those vessels, you suffer from a cardiovascular disease called coronary heart disease. So meaning that your muscles of the heart are sick. They are not able to contract. They are not able to perform the roles they're supposed to perform. And that is a whole big disease actually that then can cause chest pain. You've seen when someone is walking a very short distance upstairs and they start panting. So that can be one of the signs that there is a problem with muscles of your heart. But what is bringing this? Accumulated fat around the vessels that are supplying those muscles. So that is how unhealthy diets that are high in sugar, fat, and salt can actually lead to such conditions. The other condition that you know very well is stroke. Stroke means that the blood, actually, you know, the body is too generous to us. When it realizes that you have a lot of fat mass within your body, what the body does, it starts prioritizing particular parts. So for instance, the body can prioritize some organs and then it cuts off others. So it will cut off blood supply, for instance, to one side of the body, and so it focuses on one side. Probably that one side has the liver, the kidney, and whatever. So the body prioritizes that, and so it cuts off one body part and it doesn't supply blood there. When it fails to supply blood to a particular body organ, that organ dies off. So that death is what we call stroke. So someone has one side of the body not functional. Why? Because there was accumulated cholesterol or accumulated fat leading to the body deciding to cut off one body side so that can concentrate on most important organs that you can keep living. But you're living, you cannot do anything for yourself because, I mean, one of the body sides is dead. So you find someone bedridden for 10 years, they cannot do anything, they have to be washed, they have to be cleaned, they have to be fed, they have to be everything they do for you because already you're into the stroke mode. Sometimes the stroke may not affect the entire body side, but may affect particular body organs. So for instance, you can have your limbs not functional, they die off. So there's no blood supply there, and so they just die off. So in other words, you're living but with dead body organs. So that is a stroke that can be brought about by unhealthy diets. The other disease we could talk about is, let us talk about maybe cerebrovascular disease. Now, this is also a group of diseases, but basically they affect the vessels that go to the brain. So that's why we have cerebral. So cerebrovascular means that the vessels that are going to the brain, it could be veins or arteries, they can be affected by clogging of the fat molecules, and that can cause you trouble. You can have cerebrovascular disease as part of the cardiovascular diseases. So why am I labeling to tell consumers about this? Many other times when we listen to the word NCDs, we just assume it is diabetes and high blood pressure. But you see that cardiovascular diseases are even in different categories. If you do not have a stroke, you can have a cerebrovascular disease. If you do not have a cerebrovascular disease, one can have coronary heart disease. You know, all of those are cardiovascular diseases that we need to reflect on. There are others. For instance, we have what we call peripheral artery disease. Peripheral artery disease, it's you know, the peripherals are the limbs, like the lower extremities, the legs, the limbs, the hands, these extremes. Now, you can have peripheral artery disease, which is basically arteriosclerosis, where you have hardening of the vessels, or you have blockage of the vessels that are taking blood to the limbs, to those limbs, maybe the legs, the feet, the arms, the fingers, all those ones are peripheral. So the arteries that are going to supply blood to the hand, to the limbs, to the legs, to the fingers, they can be clogged with fat. And that fat, therefore, can block them or it can harden them. So at the end of the day, you have what we call peripheral artery disease. And sometimes that leads, of course, to a low flow of blood to those organs. Every time we talk about blockage or we talk about low blood supply, it means that even oxygen is not being supplied there, because oxygen is transported through the blood. So wherever you see me talk about this, anything that is affecting the flow of blood is also affecting the flow of oxygen, is also affecting the flow of nutrients, etc. So those body organs can also die, or they can become useless. So that is also another cardiovascular disease, peripheral artery disease. But also you can have a disease called heart valve disease. So the heart valve disease, you know, the heart has valves which open and close whenever blood is coming out. Now those valves can be clogged with fat. And when that happens, if it's clogged with cholesterol or fat, they don't, you know, they are not pumping the way they are supposed to be pumping, because there are valves which open and close the heart whenever blood comes. So what happens is that those valves can be clogged, and so they harden. Instead of closing, they take long to come and close. And instead of opening, they take long to open because there's a lot of accumulated fat. So there is a lot of pain that the body is going through because of accumulated fat. So that is the heart valve disease, affecting the vessels of the valves. So the heart is not opening when it's supposed to open, it's not closing when it's supposed to, because of that. So that's heart valve disease. So it's basically the disease that affects the valves of your heart. And of course, sometimes they narrow, or sometimes they are blocked, or sometimes they become hardened. All those conditions can happen at the same time. And so you see someone is in real pain and they tell you the heart is paining, but actually the valves are just failing to open. They tell you oxygenated blood is mixing with deoxygenated blood. What that means is that probably there is an opening that is failing at the time when oxygenated and deoxygenated, and so they end up mixing up and people die. So all those are cardiovascular diseases that are brought about by our unhealthy diets, specifically the diets that are high in sugar, the diets that are high in fat. So we also have what we call cardiomyopathy. It's also another cardiovascular. So when I start telling you about cardiovascular diseases, we can take the entire hour. So why I wanted us to focus on this is that I don't want consumers to start imagining that non-communicable diseases are just diabetes and high blood pressure. No, they go beyond, because they are cardiovascular, diseases of the heart, but also diseases of the vessels. Now, I want to tell you that one cardiovascular disease can lead to diseases of all organs, because the moment the vessels are clogged, it means you can have a challenge with the liver if the vessels of the liver are affected, and so you can go into liver failure. If it is going to the kidney, you can end up in kidney failure. If it is going to the lungs, you can have lungs failing to actually serve. If it is going to the heart, you can go into heart failure. If it is failing to go to the brain, then you can have a shutdown of the brain. Just because of unhealthy diets, you can have all those non-communicable diseases come your way. And now all these CVDs or cardiovascular diseases can now later on prompt diabetes to come in, and also other things like inflammations and even death. In fact, if you're even a woman and you have a lot of fat, you can fail to deliver or conceive. You can also fail to go for your menstrual period. So you see, the unhealthy diets can cause us a lot of trouble. If you're a woman and the blood supply is going to the ovaries or to the ovary, and then they are being blocked, you can imagine what you'd go through. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of work we need to do to improve our diets, ensuring that our diets are actually low in fat, very low in sugar, and very low in salt. In fact, let me also just highlight that there is another disease called deep vein thrombosis. Now, thrombosis it usually brings about clots. They tell you that someone has a clot. Where are these clots coming from? From this deep vein thrombosis, especially when the veins are heavily clogged. the blood is not moving sufficiently where the blood is supposed to move, it starts clotting, because it is not moving at a rate it is supposed to move, and so it is delayed within the pipeline, and so it ends up coagulating and makes those clots. So when it makes those clots, it means that the blood is becoming solid when it is supposed to be liquid. And those clots can move. It can move from the heart to the kidney, from the kidney, and so you hear that someone has a blood clot, and that can cause death. So all those are cardiovascular diseases, ladies and gentlemen, that are actually finishing our people. And I've told you that they are one of the most leading cause of death among the consumers. And mind you, yesterday I received a report from WHO. I know, Mr. Chimera, thank you for sharing that report. It was indicating actually that 1.4 billion people worldwide now are living with hypertension. We're talking about billions of consumers. 1.4 billion consumers have hypertension. But surprisingly, 1 in 5 of those have uncontrolled, it's only 1 out of 5 people who have hypertension that are able to control it. The rest of the members do not even know that they actually have it. So just imagine, in the low middle income countries or developing countries where Uganda is also a case, we see that 28% of low and middle income countries are the only ones that have hypertensive drugs readily available. 28% only. So meaning that so many people have hypertension are not able, for instance, to have medicines, because their countries can only meet, it's only 28% of the countries that have these medicines readily available. So others will struggle and die without the medication. And so, of course, it's part of the reasons why this could lead to premature death, where people just die really. If you look at between 2011 and 2025, statistics show us that cardiovascular diseases are projected to cost low and middle income countries $3.7 trillion in managing those NCDs, especially cardiovascular diseases only. So you can imagine that globally, the low income countries and middle income countries, we are projected to spend 3.7 trillion US dollars on managing cardiovascular diseases only, not NCDs, but cardiovascular diseases. And this is what WHO was reporting yesterday. And you realize that 3.7 trillion US dollars is actually 2% of the total GDP combined of these states. So this is the amount of money that we're going to lose, we're going to spend on treating just one set of NCDs. Now, you've not talked about diabetes, you've not yet talked about kidney disease, you've not yet talked about liver disease, you've not yet talked about cancer, you've not yet talked about, we are still talking about CVDs, which I've just mentioned a few minutes ago. Now, one of the other surprises that I met in that I found in that report, the report was indicating that every 1 hour, 1,000 lives are lost to stroke and heart attack. 1,000 every hour. So between the hour we're going to spend online here conversing, 1,000 people will have died, and they are dying of heart attack or stroke. Now, where these diseases are coming from is exactly what I've just told you. Accumulation of fat leading to death of cells within the vessels and whatever. Now, just imagine, we started the show at 11. By midday, we shall have lost 1,000 lives just because of stroke and heart attack. They have not yet talked about the death that is associated with other cardiovascular. Now, these are two: heart attack and the heart attack and stroke. 1,000 every single hour. So you see, consumers, we cannot risk, because you do not know the hour. So you need to be careful with the diet that you're actually having. Make sure you minimize salt consumption. You minimize fat. Please minimize fat as much as you can. Maybe, let me also first conclude with this. This report was very interesting. It also showed that 10 million lives are lost every year due to uncontrolled high blood pressure. 10 million lives. We are talking about consumers. These are guys who are dying. 10 million. They are dying because of uncontrolled blood pressure. Uncontrolled. Why? Because one, they do not know. Number two, they cannot have access to medicines. Number three, they are continuously eating wrongly because of food industry giving us wrong food. So they have uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled high blood pressure, and so we lose 10 million people just because of that one condition. Now, maybe let me speak a little bit about fat and sugar, maybe to give context why I am emphasizing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, consumption of sugar is one of the most dangerous things that you need to think about. Processed sugar is having it's part of the foods, or no, not foods, ingredients of critical concern. Number one, they have what we call empty calories, meaning that whenever you have sugar with you, there is no any other nutrient apart from calories. Secondly, the mere fact that it's highly processed, it has a very high glycemic index. What that means is that every time you take it in, it is easily broken down. And so many times, whenever we excessively consume, this so much sugar that we are taking in is converted into fat and is stored as fat molecules. And so I have explained how fat is a very big problem. Now, what is the most unfortunate bit? The most unfortunate bit is that people take sugar, a lot of fat, a lot of salt unknowingly. Why? Because the industry has mastered the art. They know that we have to put a lot of sugar, a lot of salt, a lot of fat to make the food a little bit more appetizing. It looks crispy, it looks nice, you know, it is nice to the eyes. So the industry, the food industry, uses that to lure people to consume too much fat. Let me tell you, every time you take a bottle of soda, you are taking between 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar. Just imagine if you measure 10 teaspoons and you put them in a glass, how much would that sugar be? And that is one bottle of soda. We have seen a lot of junk food and being sold by these corporate companies, a lot of juices on the market with a lot of sugar, but the sugar is not declared, with a lot of fat in some of the foods, and it's not declared. And so the consumer is just buying, or the consumer is blinded. And this is why then the governments are supposed to be responsible. In fact, governments are supposed to be sued by consumers because, one, countries like Uganda, we don't have a nutrient profiling model. A nutrient profiling model is a document, a technical document by the Ministry of Health that is supposed to show us thresholds, how much sugar is supposed to be in what product, how much fat is supposed to be in which product, how much salt is supposed to be in this kind of product. If it is a liquid or a solid, how much sugar would you expect? How much fat are we expecting? How much salt are we expecting? So that guidance is then supposed to be given to food industry. That if you're making these products, this is the maximum sugar, maximum fat, maximum salt that is supposed to be there. Anything beyond this must be declared on a packaging, so that every time you're packaging, you must indicate that, hey, consumer, this is high in sugar, high in fat, high in salt. And that then brings on a regulation or a standard on the front of the pack warning labels. So the government, it's your core mandate as a Ministry of Health, for instance, to protect people from death, to make sure people live longer, but you must put in place such documents that are regulatory in nature that support industry to come up with products that are healthier for the communities. Otherwise, the more we give consumers fat, sugar, salt, and without informing them, you are contravening their right to information, their right to awareness, their right to safety, their right to health, their right to basic needs, which are supposed to be healthy food. One of the basic needs is food, but we say that it should be the right to healthy, adequate nutrition. It should be safe, nutritious, and adequate, nutritious, and healthy. So if you do not give consumers this information, then you are contravening with their right to information, to awareness, their right to safety, their right to health, their right to all of those rights. You are actually pinning them. They even have a right to adequate and nutritious, healthy food. You are also contravening with that. So here the issue is, how do we support consumers to be able to identify unhealthy diets? In fact, if it were possible, some countries have gone ahead, and these are things that we have signed to as a country like Uganda, that, for instance, we cannot promote unhealthy food and we start struggling as a country to manage the impact of unhealthy food by people getting sick of NCDs, which take long, to spend a lot of money in treating NCDs. Number three, spend a lot of time of our consumers who are unproductive, and yet you want to go to a tenfold economy. How will you go there when consumers are less productive, they are sickly, they are always in hospital, they are suffering, you cannot even get the medicines to cater for them? Now, why can't you come up with regulatory documents like the NPM, nutrient profiling model, to help us to know how much sugar is supposed to be where? Once the NPM is in place, it means that we can even start having the front of pack warning labels that, hey, if you exceed this limit, label your food and say, hey, this is high in sugar, high in fat, high in salt, so that the consumer buys this product from a informed point of view. We can even have actually fiscal policies. Why aren't these unhealthy products more expensive? Why can't government, for instance, add taxes on those unhealthy products? So when you add a tax on unhealthy products like soda, like margarine, like Blue Band, like all those fatty things, it will mean that it can reduce the consumption rate because they will be higher in cost, and so the consumers will minimize their purchase, and so we will be saving lives. But also, if such a fiscal policy comes on board, the money generated from that should be given to the Ministry of Health to actually support the treatment of non-communicable diseases, because these foods are the ones causing trouble. So I think that we need to reflect deeply. Now, I have just given you a snapshot of CVDs, cardiovascular diseases. It is just one type of the NCDs. When I bring others, we shall look at liver disease, and we see how it is also a multitude of so many other diseases in there. We can look at we can also look at diabetes, and there are also many types in there. So you see, when you're talking about NCDs, it's a whole problem. It's a whole problem. If you come to Uganda, for instance, 33% of our people that we bury every year, they die from at least an NCD. 33%. Now, you just imagine the remaining 63%, or is it 67%, caters for accidents, women who are delivering and they die, children who have malaria. But so you can imagine that non-communicable diseases actually kill the majority of Ugandans, 33%. And 80% of them are premature deaths. They die before they are supposed to die because we don't have sufficient care for them, but also they recognize that they are sick late. So many of them just die. Now, just imagine another sad story for Ugandans, that 22% of Ugandans have a risk of getting a non-communicable disease, meaning that as we walk along the street, 22% of us have a higher risk of getting an NCD any time from now. If not, they might even be having it. Now, this is what the ministry is reporting, but even the statistics could be greater than that. So we have a big burden, we have a challenge to deal with, and we implore our governments, please, Ministry of Health for Uganda, I know that you have a draft nutrient profiling model. Please don't stay with it for centuries. Pass it, and then the consumers are saved. Once that is passed, I know we're going to have the front of the pack warning labels. We're going to have restriction of marketing of unhealthy products to people. Why should, for instance, unhealthy food be advertised on public TVs? Why? You're trying to attract consumers to buy unhealthy products, and they get sick and get cardiovascular diseases, and you bury them? I mean, we cannot. So, Ministry of Health, as fast as you can, I hope this video will actually reach you. Please pass the nutrient profiling model as early as possible. Let us quickly embark on developing the front of pack warning labels, regulations. Let us quickly embark on restriction of advertising of unhealthy food, especially to our children, so that we can have a future that is healthy, a population that is healthy, which is working, which is making money, so that we can go into the step that the government is planning to have in the NDP4. I mean, the NDP4 is very clear that we want to go tenfold increase. We cannot go there unless people are healthy. the more we don't improve the health status, the nutrition status of our people, forget about your 10% increase, manifold and whatever, forget about it. So we need to do first things first. Let us promote healthy living so that now we can start thinking about the profitability. Let us deal with the industry because the industry has all the tactics to let us down, but the ministry and the government, you are the powers that be to protect our consumers, to protect our children, to protect the future of this nation. So I cannot really overemphasize the need of regulations, NPM, front of back, restriction of unhealthy food, etc. So, Mr. Chimera, sorry for being tough and for taking a lot of time, but I think that is the first submission that I can make for now, and I hope that we can pick a few things here and there for us to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Emphasis isn't being tough. Emphasis is to show the gravity of an issue that is there to safeguard consumers. Like I always say, consumer protection is a fundamental principle for having healthy economies, healthy countries, healthy population. And what you have just shared and what you might think is tough, it is part of the consumer protection framework. Having a nutrient profiling model provides a basis for which a country can lay a foundation for healthy foods and beverages for their citizens. So all that you have shared with us is a good foundation to have a healthy nation. Once they have a healthy nation, we have a healthy economy. And one of the ingredients for that is the health of consumers, and that can be done through consumer protection. As in protection, it's all about safety, quality, aspirations in different goods and services. But one other ingredient that I would love to conclude our discussion with today are consumer voices, consumer education, consumer information. Once a consumer is informed, they can influence policy. Once a consumer has information, they make informed choices, sustainable choices, responsible consumption. Once a consumer is educated, that consumer would be in position as a healthy one with information and education to advocate. An educated, informed, and healthy consumer will advocate for a healthy, sustainable nation because they would be energetic, productive, and speak out on issues that are affecting them. So consumer voices are very key. Consumer voices are the best asset for a business. Because once consumers speak out on things affecting them, then they are in position to have disposable income. They be a healthy market. There will be healthy taxpayers. There would be a less burden to the economy. There would be an asset to the economy. There will be a sustainable livelihood as they would be in a position to pay for their taxes, to appreciate the services, to invest their savings. But if they are investing or spending their savings on Medicare or on medicines, then they are not in position to be productive, to save, to invest. So investing in consumer protection, consumer information, consumer health, consumer education is a sustainable foundation for a national economy. Those consumers who have saved will be critical in their actions. They will be able to educate their children. They will be able to save, invest their savings. They will be able to buy the products that are put on the market. So, a sustainable lifestyle, livelihood, through investment in making consumers responsible, in providing consumers that what they need, because they are the majority. Just imagine if each consumer would live healthily and save over 100,000 shillings without touching it in a year or two, but it will be saved somewhere because they're healthy, they are productive, they are churning out. So as we conclude all this, we need to look at the consumer, the biggest and the most influential socioeconomic grouping that drives the economy from different perspectives. Once they are affected socially, they will impact a number of valuables. Once they are affected economically, they will impact a number of valuables. There will be less, they will not have disposable income, they will not be able to pay their taxes effectively, even buy goods and services on the economy. Once they are affected through technology, they are not going to be able to do uptake. We're in a digital economy. Today, consumers will need quality technology. They will also need digital and financial literacy so that they make correct decisions, so that they can be effective participants in the Internet of Things, to have safety, to be able to detect fraud, scams. Money that goes into scams and fraud takes away the quality of life. That will end up making consumers eat unhealthy diets. If we do not have strong legal and regulatory frameworks, this will affect consumers deeply. And it will have ripple effects on consumers' health and welfare. Even it will affect the economy, it will affect the environment. So, and sustainability will not be realized. The SDGs will be impacted. So, other aspects where we bring in better business, if consumers are affected by unscrupulousness, unethical practices, they will have unhealthy diets, they will get unscrupulous deals, they lose their savings, their incomes. Then this will affect many other things with a ripple effect. So ethics is very key in all of these aspects. Consumer voices are key drivers in any country. Consumers are the biggest game changer. Once they are empowered, they will drive and demand quality. Thus, we will have a culture of quality in governance, in policy making, in businesses. We'll have responsible consumption, we'll have responsible production, and we will realize sustainability. So aspects to do with unhealthy diet can have ripple negative effects. But aspects to do with nutritious, healthy diet will have got positive ripple effects. Healthy consumers, productive, disposable income, investing, influencing decisions, and improving livelihoods. So consumers are a game changer in every aspect of humanity. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank Bernard for always bringing out the technical issues. And I would like to give you a last word in case you have anything. And also I would like to thank our colleagues at the Humanist TV. Bernard, in case you have any rejoinder, please feel free.
No, I think I was done, but to consumers, I think we need to rally ourselves and we fight for our rights. We need to be the ones spearheading the campaign against unhealthy diets, and also to make sure that we call upon our leaders to give us frameworks that work for us, in fact. So all consumers must be concerned. And I mean, I haven't make a disclaimer that even those who are who are the owners of the power, the people who are supposed to make policies, I want to also remind you that you're also consumers.
Yes.
So you don't think that consumers are the Bernards, the Chimeras, the Bongoles. No, you are in fact a consumer, and in fact you might even be the worst consumer because you are in those so many meetings where you are eating junk. So the earlier you do something, the better for yourself, but also the better for other consumers. So all of us, let us behave and treat each other as a consumer, and all of us, let us be responsible. Let us take on our mandate. Let us have that collective effort to make sure that we fight for what is supposed to be ours, and to make sure that the industry doesn't play on our heads, but we make sure that even the industry players are also consumers. They are forgetting these things so fast. So let us all work together to make sure that each and every person has access to safe, nutritious, and healthy diets to control NCDs and any other form of disease. In fact, food is a basic need, and so it is supposed to give you life and not supposed to kill you. So the more we focus on providing healthier options to people, the better. The industry can still even provide the best options. You guys are the food scientists. You can still give people safer and healthier, nutritious options. So there is no way we can start treating human beings as if we are treating whatever for profits. Forget your profits. You'll get still the profits if you give us safe, nutritious, and healthy food. So let us call upon each other, put our hands together, fight together to make sure we have social concern, we have solidarity to fight for what belongs to consumers, healthy, nutritious, and safe food for all and by all. Thank you, Henry, and I think we catch up again in the next episode.
Thank you very much. And our colleagues at Humanist, thank you for the opportunity. Our viewers, thank you always for putting off time and also liking and also repositing and recommending our series to other people. So thank you very much, our producer, Dennis Bongole, wherever you are. And thank you, Bernard. Thank you all. God bless. Superb weekend.